What's up, people? This is Afromania, and I'm here for another episode of Backseat.exe with my brother, Mikedot, who's chilling right now at the moment. How you doing, man?
I'm fine, doing good.
Yeah, chilling? Good. I love that. So, without that, dude, we're just gonna get into it, man. We got a lot of things on the plate, and we just gotta talk about it right now. So, let's do it right now.
All right. Well, we got a few things to discuss, like a canceled Spiderman game that a lot of people are rallying to get a revival. A new gaming studio that just got announced that's comprised of several industry veterans.
Yep.
And we want to have a little shout out to the great Akira Toriyama, and as well as covering a huge breaking story that's ongoing right now regarding a certain consulting group in the gaming industry. Now, before we continue, please like the video, share the video, comment, all that good stuff, because if I don't promote this channel, no one else will. So anyway, starting off with what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, before we actually get into our topics, Mikedot and I would like to give our condolences to the late creator and animator Akira Toriyama, who passed away at age 68 suddenly from this earth. And for people that know that name, he is the one responsible for creating one of the great animes right now, Dragon Ball Z. And we just like to just kind of give our wonderful condolences about that. I think he's just been a very interesting part of our childhood as two nerds that love anime, and we just want to kind of give our respects on that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he is one of the greatest mangaka of all time. His work has extended far and wide. He's a visionary that just managed to put his artwork and his influence in so many things, and not just Dragon Ball. Also, you have to remember him for Chrono Trigger, Dr. Slump, and just like obviously Dragon Quest, and that's another big one, Dragon Quest, a Japan favorite. And overall, just his stories just resonated with so many people to the point where it bridged a gap between so many like shapes, colors, and creeds, that his influence should never be forgotten. I mean, his work is so popular that even like Mexican drug cartels like stop illegal business just to watch an episode of Dragon Ball. He was that influential. He was amazing, man.
Yeah, just a culture changer in terms of the way of just anime, and even in pop culture in general. There's so many references that can be linked to pretty much, like you said, all around the world, and even in sporting events, even athletes, actors that resonated with Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, this guy's going to be definitely missed, and there's been a lot of small tributes that's kind of been panned out throughout the last couple of weeks for him. So yeah, we just want to give our condolences about that, man.
Yep, rest in peace. Rest in peace to the late, great Akira Toriyama.
Yep. So now that with that being said, we are going to head up to talk about a very interesting topic. So right off the bat, Doom developers will be launching indie AAA game studio with a dystopian sci-fi shooter being their first title. This actually comes up from a report from Variety that a brand new developing AAA team called Empty Vessel will be slowly in the works. Okay. So with that being said, yeah, a brand new AAA studio being in the works right now with a dystopian first-person shooter. Your thoughts about that?
I mean, when you come down to it, I mean, what does that all really mean exactly? Because like a lot of studios always open up and saying that they're former developers of this studio, former developers of that studio, which is all nice and good, but they still haven't actually shown what they're actually coming together to creating. Like I've seen this and heard this so many times of developers saying that like it's supposed to mean that this game is going to be the best game ever because they're not tied to the mega corporations, but there's still a chance that it could end up being the same old stuff that we've known and expected from the AAA gaming space. And we really need to see some work. We really need to see what they're cooking first before we can get excited.
And that's fair, though. However, again, this is clearly coming from the ground up. Right now, they're starting to build a foundation. And right now, one of those foundations right now is kind of letting the world know that we're going to be working. I think one of the things that I think about is Hideo Kojima, when he left Konami to start his company for the first time. And they kind of did the same thing what Dystopia is doing right now with their Empty Vessels doing right now with their company, and how he, slowly. Remember that trailer that Kojima launched in the announcement of his new development studio? It's kind of in that same breath right now. It's just kind of making that announcement that, hey, we're going to start working on some games right now. And we're going to be in the business to be able to create art that hopefully that the market and gamers will respond to. So here is hope, and I put all my blessings, and I hope everything goes well for the studio, and I hope they do big things.
For our next topic, it recently has been announced recently been leaked that Insomniac Games was working on another Spider-Man game alongside Spider-Man 2, which was supposed to be a multiplayer live service Spider-Man game across the Spider-Verse. It's supposed to be akin to the Spider-Verse movies, where you get to play as multiple different Spider-Man and you can team up, hang out, take on baddies, and just swing around New York City with your favorite version of Spider-Man. But unfortunately, this has been canceled, and the trailer has been leaked out just to show what could have been. And a lot of people are upset, so going so far as to actually push a hashtag. But yeah, the game is canceled. The trailer's out there just to show people what they were working on, and a lot of people are upset. It would have been cool to have a game like this, but I kind of understand why it was canceled, because right now live service games are not doing so hot. With every successful live service game you hear about, like, I don't know, Helldivers 2, there are tens of hundreds of other live service games that are getting shut down day by day. And it really goes to show you that a lot of people do not have time to focus on these games. Pretty much people are just glued to one live service game like Fortnite or Apex Legends, and that's basically it. You can't really stick your face into that pie unless you're really bringing something special. And so I kind of understand why this game was canceled, considering how live service games are now. But how do you feel about this canceled game?
I have a different opinion on that. I think one of the reasons why I think this game was ultimately canned, because you said that this game was actually being built alongside Spider-Man 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think one of the reasons why this project ultimately got canned, and I think it's because I don't think they wanted a multiplayer aspect game to cut into their storytelling element of the game. I think they didn't want two games clearly with the same kind of mechanics battling with each other and then almost cannibalizing each other within their own market. And I think going back to that, I think they wanted to focus on a single player experience, which I think a lot of people, like you said, have been clamoring for more, not more of these live service games. And just by having this particular game coming out the same time as Spider-Man 2 would undercut that. I think they wanted just to focus on 2. They wanted just to focus on telling story, and then also giving out a decent game experience versus a game that's just going to be simply multiplayer focused and basically trying to create a ecosystem or a web quotations like Fortnite or Helldivers 2 at the current moment. So seeing the trailer to it looks kind of cool. You know, the idea of having a lot of your friends with their own Spider-Man swinging around New York fighting baddies together would have been a cool idea. But I totally understand Insomniac's decision to actually cancel it. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, well, you're not necessarily wrong that they could just want to focus on like narrative and like good storytelling. Well, that's debatable, but I think that just them focusing on just live service aspect in general, I feel like they might not make enough of a profit to justify having it. That's personally how I feel, because again, the live service like market is like it's very like picky with who succeeds and who fails, and it's just something, unless you're gonna have something that's really going to pull everyone's attention away, it's not a market you want to jump head first into.
You don't think Spider-Man would have been a great game to be able to do that? I mean, Spider-Man, it's a very popular IP.
Well, I think that it still could have worked as a live service game, because it isn't to say that you can't do storytelling and narrative in a multiplayer game. It's been done before, but it's just the money aspect that I feel that they would lean more into because of how the economy is, how AAA gaming is. A lot of people are tightening their belts, so they're not gonna want to put their so much time into a game that's supposed to pull you away and pull your attention from many other games. Because that's what live service games are designed to do.
Yeah, I could see that, especially kind of with Spider-Man. Insomniac Spider-Man design, trying to test the waters into a live service game. And maybe ideally, I just don't think it makes sense.
Yeah,
it was how Insomniac has Spider-Man at the moment. I don't get me wrong, what the trailer shows is a cool concept, and that's not to say that it couldn't work. But I think with how they have designed the game, it was built to be a single player experience. Personally, yeah, and I just don't think it would work.
It would have been tacked on.
It would feel very tacked on, yeah. Because going on, moving on, like certain games, there are two development teams that work on the single player game, and then there's another development team that works on the multiplayer. And there are times where the single player looks very polished while the multiplayer game doesn't look as great. Some things are kind of pulled back just to be able to handle the multiplayer aspects of it. So I wouldn't want that for Spider-Man The Great Web, if that were to be the case, to have a lot of the details or a lot of the things that make Insomniac Spider-Man games great, fun to play in the first place, be stripped back. So, again, my opinion.
I gotcha. I mean, personally speaking, I've never been too much of a fan of the Spider-Verse and all these different Spider-Men. I know that's gonna sound blasphemy to certain people that love the Spider-Verse stuff, but personally, I just liked it better when there was only one Peter Parker. There was only one Spider-Man, and that was that. Now you got like a million different Spider people, and it just makes the OG Spider-Man not as special when you have so many of the same heroes basically doing the same thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, it's just that's just my opinion. Okay, no one crucify me in the comments.
You're allowed to have an opinion. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion, man.
No. You go on Twitter, a lot of people will disagree with you.
Well, that's idiots. That's idiot central.
It's unfortunately idiots run the world.
That is also true. Sadly.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking of idiots, we have a pretty big
hot take.
Yeah, a pretty big hot take going on with a story that's currently ongoing in development. It's regarding a certain consultation group by the name of Sweet Baby Inc. and a huge drama that they started up considering a Steam curation group that wanted to basically inform customers, gamers, people all over about this company and what games they've worked on. Yeah, there is a huge drama. One of the Sweet Baby Inc. employees basically pushed a harassment campaign on this user named Cabrutus, a Brazilian guy who basically started the Steam curation group. Basically, they wanted to attack this group, get it shut down, and they also wanted to get this guy's Steam account banned and taken away from him, considering this man had 14 years of Steam games on his account. And considering that the guy is Brazilian, like exchange rates from USD to Brazilian, those purchases are not cheap. And they wanted to get rid of that. They wanted to take that from him, which is really messed up. But because of the Streisand effect, the Steam group pretty much blew up. It was supposed to be just a small 1,000 like strong group. Now it's up to 200,000. 200,000 users joined that group because these employees wouldn't stop running their mouth on social media about it. I mean, continuing on, then after that, when they tried to do like little like harassment campaigns, and they started hit pieces on trying to get this group taken down, saying that they're a bunch of evil people that just hate like diversity in gaming, which is a complete lie. And a lot of these news outlets were completely omitting details about what led up to this situation. It's really insane. Now, like catching up to current like events that's going on, now it's getting to the point where a US government funded nonprofit organization is now calling for other game companies and gaming news outlets to denounce this Steam group and quote unquote Gamergate 2. It's really getting into a massive like rabbit hole of connections between this group and that, and these and like ideals and beliefs. It's really getting insane. And basically that's just like basically a cliff notes of the situation. It's a lot deeper than that, but that's trying to summarize as much as I can. As much as I want to say more about this, I want to know, like, Afro, I mean, just hearing all of this information, like, what do you feel about this?
Okay. Yes.
Sorry.
That is a lot.
I'm sorry for the info dump.
Yeah. That's a lot. Okay, so the company Sweet Baby Inc. So essentially they're a consultant firm, correct?
Yes.
And they're basically a company comes and hires an outside party to basically come in. They're currently working on a project, and they are basically a third set of eyes to see what changes that they can add to hopefully better enhance the project or fix certain problems in that project. I'm guessing, right? That's kind of where I'm going at, just to kind of keep it. It's a lot more technical than that, but that's kind of where I'm going at. Is that kind of where I'm at? Okay, great. So with that being said, and basically with this particular company, they're basically focused mostly on trying to, let's just say, make more of these games more inclusive in terms of hopefully being more diversity sensitive, if that's the best way to explain it with a lot of these projects. This is how I look at this. In this whole crazy situation, and I know there's a lot more that's happening. I feel like a lot of these companies, that hire these type of if it's a diversity situation of saying, hey, we need more women in games, we need more black people in games, LGBT. Why don't you, as a company, just simply hire those type of people with sus talent? Why are those people not already in the boardrooms or in the development space to probably begin with? That way you don't have to spend money bringing in a third group to begin with. That would probably be my take in the whole situation. Also, and another thing I feel like why a lot of these companies tend to hire these consultant groups, for a couple of reasons. If the game, let's just say the game bombs, right? Let's say the game just doesn't do well. Guess who they have an outlet to go to why the game just didn't do well to begin with? They can blame that group. right off the bat. Honestly, I don't know how strong their opinion. I guess where my idea, where I'm going with this group is, how much influence do these people have on these games to begin with? Because they have a pretty big resume of the companies they worked on, as well as the games that they worked on. Like, how do you know what parts they played a part into why this game either succeeded or failed? That's the question I would probably want to ask.
Well, a lot of these companies do already have in-house for these kind of things. The issue is that they tend to push like a narrative rather than push something that's like also coherent with the source material that they're working on. Like, they'll change things here and there for the sake of like getting diversity points. For example, it's just like they went in working on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and they basically changed elements of certain characters that were not a part of them for the longest time. You could go in and change Deadshot to like a black guy when in the previous Arkhamverse games he was white, and then you have like Harley Quinn not acting like herself and basically denouncing her old outfits and stuff like that, and saying, yeah, right, that's totally not me right now. I've grown up, I'm a mature. And then you have like story elements that just don't make sense, like King Shark wearing like Green Lantern's ring when that's not exactly how Green Lantern's ring is supposed to work. And it makes you question, why are they making these changes for, and who does this appeal to?
Okay. All right, so I guess, so would you contribute to Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, the failure mainly towards that? Do you?
I would say,
because that's where I'm trying to get at.
Okay, I would say like that's a 50-50 thing, because granted, if the story was perfect, the characters were all on point, and
even with all those changes,
it still would have been a bad game simply due to the mechanics, the live service aspect and whatnot. So obviously they're not completely like responsible for that game financially failing, but they did contribute to it.
Okay, that's totally fine. All right. Again, I don't know why we put so much emphasis on a consultant firm, like an outside consultant firm. Again, like you said, a lot of this stuff could have been dealt with properly if you simply had just bringing more people than having, say, a whole like Caucasian like development staff that's in the whole area. Like I think about a situation where remember that situation was Overwatch. I don't know if you remember about the whole situation. Like, I think they went to MIT, I believe, to get like an algorithm and what.
Oh yeah, they had a new algorithm system built. I think it was built in house.
It was
about how we should make our next character based on these diversity parameters, and it was critically panned by the gaming audience, saying that this is not how you create new characters, because you're basically going off like an algorithm, and you're basically doing this
with algorithms and inputs and prompts in order to say, hey, this is how you should create this next diversity character. Where I feel like a lot of that could have just, if you hired a little bit of a mixed culture into that, maybe that could have been able to guide you in certain things. Not all of it, but maybe could have guided you to certain development situations versus the way that they went at it. And that's why they took it a little bit flack about it. I know it's a little bit of a different situation. But again, it kind of comes back into what this, again, I don't know how much emphasis that you can put on it. So you say like 50% of that is what hurt, Suicide Squad game. Okay, that's totally fine. I'm trying to figure out like what other games have they worked on where, again, I don't know how much to me, like a third party company, it's hard to issue the blame on them. Although like, again, this is what I said, the reason why you would hire a company like this, because if a game were to bomb, then they could say, hey, we hired this company, they made all these changes, you put the blame on them in a situation like that. But then again, how many games succeeded, where how much emphasis did they have? And again, you also have to remember with a lot of these companies, they don't need to take their opinions to heart. That their only job is to, hey, observe it, what do you think we should do to change the game? They don't necessarily have to take all of their notes. That's it, pretty much, moving forward, if you're running the company.
Well, okay, so the issue is that it runs a lot deeper than that, because there's a little thing called ESG. If you haven't...
What's that?
Okay, ESG stands for Environmental Social Governance. It's basically a new type of system that's been implemented into capitalism and investment firms that basically says that you have to focus on like applying these elements into your company.
Oh my God. Okay, so you think like, okay, this is for our sports fans out there, for anybody who's in the NFL. There's a little thing called the Rooney Rule, where basically like almost like I know where you're going with this. It's kind of like where NFL coaches have to interview a black person before they can hire before they can continue to hire anybody else in the situation. That's kind of where this is kind of the equivalent to that.
Yeah, basically, except it's a lot more like financially serious than that.
Okay.
Because you basically need to have, with the whole ESG system, you basically have to have a certain number of colored people. You need to have a certain number of women on your team. You need to have this.
Well, let's pull back. Enough diverse people. How about that? Colored people. That's not.
I mean,
so
like, I mean, I'm just being blunt, because that's exactly what they would basically put it if you just come down to it.
No, I mean the word color. I'm just,
obviously.
Literally, let's, that's what I'm saying. You have to have a number sort of women. You have to have a number certain of people of different ethnicities in working within the company.
I mean, I know. I mean, it's just same with just saying that. I know it might upset people, but that's the truth. But like I was saying, you need to hit these quotas in order to get favorable loans for your company.
Okay.
Because if you don't have these quotas, it basically means that you will either get loans with high interest rates, or you won't get any loans at all. And
so this is more of a money grab.
Yes. When it comes down to it, all comes down to money.
A money grab. Okay.
These companies are just focusing on ESG and DEI initiatives.
So still, even if that were to still be the case, okay, so one of those ideas, one of those ways of getting these loans at the end of the day is hiring a company like
yes.
Again, okay, still, at the end of the day, you still got the loan. That, once again, that doesn't necessarily mean as a company, you still don't need to take any of their information and put them into heart, unless there's a rule to say that you have to have one or two things, you have to meet a mandate in order to be able to get that loan.
100%. It's mandated. 100% mandated. And that's an issue, because what you can't create when you're forcing these things into your product. And that's the issue. Because listen, I just want to preface this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a diverse cast of characters or a diverse amount of people working on your game. Nobody should have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with that. Obviously, Afro doesn't have an issue with that. The issue is when you're hand-fisting these things into the game just to meet basically a score. Basically, ESG is the equivalent of a social credit score. And when you're forcing these things into your game, it leads to a cheesy product in the end of the day. And it's shameful, because like we never used to have these issues back in the past, like in the 80s and 90s. We didn't have like consultant groups working on giving their advice on video games and whatnot. It was all done naturally.
Well, back in the 80s and 90s, there was no really need for, video games were basically in infant stage, so none of that really existed.
It's true.
I mean, consultant firms have existed, but not in terms of video games.
Yeah, I mean, and you could also argue that even in the 2000s and early 2010s, it was still not a thing. Basically, this started really around like 2016. I believe that's when the Sweet Baby Inc. company was founded. And ironically, that was also the same time when a certain president got elected. Coincidence? But I'm not sure. But that's another like can of worms that I won't get into. But still, like the whole issue, like leading up to current day right now, with now you have a U.S. government funded company that's basically being paid with U.S. taxpayer dollars, now telling people that news outlets and game companies need to rally against anyone who is against our cause, the whole Gamergate stuff. And it's just, it makes you wonder, how deep does this all go?
Well, if the saying that if it's government mandated, we have to be able to pay, where it's simply just, hey, you don't do this as a loan. Well, I mean, that sucks. I mean, that totally sucks. Again, if it gets into the way of the art and the story that you want to tell and how your game is distributed, I think that's one thing. However, if these companies are simply doing it because of the money loans, again, I guess business is going to be business. You know, what are you going to do? But if it's in terms of just making good games that need to diversify, and like that should be an in-house situation, I feel like, where you know, you don't need to bring in a consultant firm again. And this is not the only consultant firm, I think, that does this, right?
Absolutely not.
There's probably multiple consultant firms.
In fact, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like I said, like, people started digging into more details about this this Sweet Baby Inc. And they're apparently funded by a group called Baby Ghosts, which is connected to another like group called Weird Ghosts. I don't understand what's the deal with babies and ghosts, but it's a very weird connection. But yeah, they basically have the same verbiage on their website talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. And it's just strange how basically
they seem like they're all mimicking each other right
exactly
now. Okay. All right. To be also fair to a lot of the consultant groups, is there, because it seems like not all consultant groups that are pushing this are trying to be evil, or in your way, maybe trying to ham-fist these developers. Are there any consulting groups that are in the same realm as a Sweet Baby Inc. That are not like this, or trying to ham-fist?
I mean, I can't really say. I can only like point out a few that are basically in the same realm of Sweet Baby Inc., like Black Girl Gamers, a consulting group that worked on the Forspoken game. Unfortunately, that was a game that failed so hard that it closed the development studio and it got rolled back into Square Enix. That's how bad the game did. And to be perfectly honest,
which one, again, going back to the situation, if you're Square Enix, you're just simply blaming it on that consulting group. That's just straight up business. Like, that's exactly the whole thing. Instead of just like, hey, again, I get it. It depended on certain companies like that. Like Square Enix is a Japanese-based company, so probably they won't know much about that, or not. Or
I'm about to say, like, technically, no, not anymore.
Well, I guess they're more European.
No, they're located in the U.S., California.
They switch over.
Square Enix is now like California-based.
Okay, whatever. Either way, whatever. It still has Japanese roots. Either way, again, like it just kind of screams laziness in terms of the development side of games. If you're not going to be able to just hire, I guess it's not more than that, but it could be just a simple start when you're making games like this, or just trying to bring in hopefully like minds into it. Again, I guess consulting groups is just a simpler, easier way. Like you said, we can get money out of the deal, and we can just simply bring these people in just to make one-point things. And again, even that, I feel like, I don't know, they have to be like, hey, they have to be blaring. I just don't think they have to be blaring changes too. Like, you can make one or two little changes into it and still get your money, right? Like again, it's still, it really should. And here's the thing: you don't even have to take the money too. You know, you don't really have to sit here and take the loans and credit to make the game if you necessarily need it.
I mean,
but money talks right now, and people are trying to get it to it. Like not. unless this is a super mandate where every game needs to have some diversity aspect to it, which I really hard to believe. I can't believe that not every game's going to jump on that, or every studio is going to be like that.
I mean, well, yeah, every studio doesn't have to be like that, and obviously there's a lot of studios. There's a handful of studios are trying to just make diversity in a natural way, but there are patterns. People recognize patterns when it comes to the AAA gaming industry, and they're just people are pointing
Mostly
to them
like a copycat league. It's mostly copycat.
Yeah, again, which leads back to this whole curation group and how it started, and basically trying to inform people that these games have the sweet baby stank right now, and just letting you know that if you really don't like what they do, avoid these games. That's basically all the list do it. And just
speaking of that, how many games has Sweet Baby being Inc. that has totally bombed? That's what I'm also trying to figure out too, because not every game that they've touched is a complete disaster too.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a bit of an over exaggerate. I get that this maybe this consultant group has a little bit more reach than they should, but every game they touch can't be a complete disaster.
Yeah, not every single game that they've made is a complete disaster, but I would obviously say that it was Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League that basically put them in the crosshairs with how poorly received.
I get it. It's a game that basically brought them out into the open right now, and now there's more talk about it. Also, you have to also understand the climate of things right now and how everything's going right now and the political bullshit that's going back and forth. I totally understand that. However, like you said, this was just a game that brought them out into the open. However, I don't know what's their history of other games tanking under the consultant group. Again, I don't know how much influence power that this group really has in terms of the production of the game's going to be good or not. Are you going to sit there and buy the game because the Sweet Baby Inc. consultant group was a part of this game right now, and hence how the game's going to suck? Like, I don't even know how deep is how many games were affected that the sales were affected poorly. Like, what's the correlation to that? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, it have to really dig in to really figure that stuff out. I mean,
and again, and I'm sorry, and to jump into it, how much of a percentage does that enough to it like I said, if it's 50, I can understand. Like Suicide Squad was 50-50. Maybe the group only had a 10% part of the game tanking.
Well, so obviously,
I mean, there has to be some push.
Obviously, we don't know the full extent of how much control that these groups like Sweet Baby Inc. have,
which I don't think have a lot of control that I think personally, I don't think have a lot of control that people are trying to make it out to be. Personally, in my opinion, I think depending on what the type of game it is. Well, I think because it's a AAA game like Suicide Squad, that's why it's getting so much of the attention. However, this was a game that was already, but again, I feel like they're being attached to it. But again, this game was already having issues off the bat. This game was delayed for about 4 years until it finally made it out to product with so many changes in the game. Maybe them coming into may have issue to it, but I feel like there were some issues with that game way before even when their names started to be brought up.
Well, like I said, it's like the extent of influence they have on the narrative of this game is questionable, but obviously they're apparent enough considering how much they boldly boast about their work on social media, telling about how we finally there's a black man on the cover of a AAA video game. I'm so proud, even though there were black people on the cover of video games long before
all right.
that.
So you want to claim vanity points? That's okay. Whatever. It's whatever. If you want the image of it, sure. In terms of the game itself, I'm just trying to figure out how much influence they really had in terms of the gameplay, in terms of story, in terms of the characters developed into it, to the point that was their involvement enough for the game to either fail or succeed. And we're probably never going to really know about that. Like you said, there's a lot more that has to be dealt with, but I don't think enough where I feel like we're giving a company like this much attention to.
Well, okay. Well, with all that said, I would always obviously say that Sweet Baby Inc. is not like a big boogeyman in the gaming industry right now, but they are a symptom of a larger issue that's happening with the industry right now, and that again is ESG and diversity mandates being forced on mostly AAA gaming right now.
Okay. So, all right, and I get it, and that's totally fine if that is quote unquote the mandate. But again, like AAA, like EA doesn't need to take the money, you know. EA doesn't need to take the money. Warner Brothers doesn't need to take the money. Square Enix doesn't need to take the money. That is their choice right now. I don't know exactly if it has to be the mandate. And I feel like there should be other ways to be able to accomplish that mandate in-house. Again, I feel like my argument goes back. You could solve a lot about this if you just simply hired diverse in groups and not have to avoid this mandate. I mean, but again, if your money, again, it goes back to always money. You know, it's not really, it's never really about the diversity, but it's about how much money that we can get out of this whole situation.
Well, personally, I don't think there should be any mandates in gaming for any reason, because it's supposed to be a creative medium. When you put mandates, you stifle creativity. I think the developers.
So there's no such thing as deadlines.
Well, obviously, there's still in AAA gaming space. Yes, obviously, there's deadlines, but
yeah, I mean, there has to be some form of
like
mandate,
obviously,
like mandates. You have to be able to hit your point. You know, you have to hit your targets. Mm-hmm. That, yeah, but in terms of creatively, yeah.
Well, and that's why a lot of people feel like the AAA space is just like. It's losing its luster, because a lot of these things are just being done by like accountants and mandates.
That I agree with.
And it's just like, there's very little passion in a AAA gaming space, and a lot of people can feel that. Like customers, like gamers, pretty much most of them really don't care about any of this stuff. As long as they feel that the game is fun, they'll play it, whatever. But one thing that they will absolutely pay attention to is when the quality of a game suffers.
I agree.
And then a lot of people feel that the qualities of these games are suffering because of these mandates and because of companies and consulting groups like Sweet Baby Inc. and just ESG and all this stuff is affecting the quality of this game. And that's why stuff like Power World is popping off, because the developers don't adhere to these mandates. They just made the game that they wanted to make, and the market shows that how popular it is, and just how successful a game could be without forcing this and that into the game.
Sure. It at the end of the day, when it comes to video games, it's about developing a good product. Right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, that people gravitate and enjoy. Again, that's not to say that companies can't hire third-party groups. Again, like you said, another person just to come in and, you know, give suggestions and to be able to see if they can make the product. I understand having an extra pair of eyes doesn't hurt, but I guess in my opinion, it shouldn't. Again, they're just to observe your product, and by the end of the day, you have to make those decisions of what's best for the game, you know, at the end of the day, whether if you do bring in some oversight or not. However, again, I think in terms of just, you know, one of the issues right now is because there are these AAA gaming companies, they are strapline because of the money that they need to bring in to their shareholders, and that they have to, I guess, follow these rules in order to keep the money flow coming in. So yeah, I think it just seems right now, the bigger the company you are, the more strapped you are, and the more regulations you have to deal with, depending on where you're working at right now. You know, you think about Skull and Balls. Skull and Balls. Well, that game was Balls, so you know that's actually Charlie, not That's actually pretty accurate. But, it comes back to the situation was, Ubisoft, the reason why that game was in development hell for almost a decade was because they had to make a game in Singapore to be able to take advantage of the tax cuts. So, they got a crappy product and now look at it as it now. Now, I think it's discounted. I think they finally did they discount that game? It's still $70.
I don't know. I don't care. It's a bad game.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed about that. I was hoping that game would be good. But that's my take on it, man.
Yeah, it's a really like big rabbit hole of a mess, and it's just kind of like I said, it's a Sweet Baby Inc. is a bigger symptom of a larger problem that's happening in the gaming industry right now, and the fact that now governments are getting involved over like a Steam group that some Brazilian guy made. And it's a shame because like the guy himself is a pretty nice guy. He has no issue with diversity in games. I've actually had a talk with him here and there, and he really just wants to let people make an informed decision when it comes to gaming and this stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's kind of insane that these people are always championing how you gotta lift up certain voices. You gotta lift up voices of different like races and ethnicities, but they're trying to shame this guy who's Brazilian, who lives in a third world country and is just trying to look out for other people when it comes to spending on their game. And I guess diverse voices don't matter when it comes to a person that goes against your beliefs.
I just think in a business perspective that these third-party companies should not have as much power as they should. Again, if you're trying to make a product that is yours, again, if you want to go with a consultant firm, that's totally fine. At the end of the day, they should not have an effect on your product whatsoever. You should have the final say on that. And that's my final answer.
Yep. I mean, and my final answer is just that I really do believe that these consulting groups and all this ESG and all this nonsense, it really needs to go by the wayside. I mean, we really need to get back to just focus on making good games and just like doing diversity naturally instead of forcing it in. And overall, these companies need to learn to just manage budgets and stop with the bloat in hiring all these.
I think with the consulting group, it's not the biggest issue. I think it's a part of an issue.
I said that too.
Okay, I thought you said what's the bigger issue.
I said that they are a symptom of a larger problem with the gaming industry.
Not listening. Sorry about that. Okay.
Anyway, that is the end of this episode. If you like this episode, please rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm Mikedot with Afromania, and we are saying peace.
Take care.